Welcome back to The Narrative. I'm your storyteller, Callistra Faria. Anthony Smith Jr., the newest independent parliamentarian in Antigua and the newest member of the Gaston Browne Cabinet of Ministers. On a Sunday, he was a member of the United Progressive Party, and today he's a member of the executive of the party whom he ran against in the last general elections in Antigua. What's the story of Anthony Smith Jr. and what kind of repercussions there might be for him politically as he has moved on to the Gaston Browne cabinet? Smith says he is an independent, but he's sitting in the Labour cabinet and raises a question of how independent he can remain in the parliament. You can't very well vote against the people who you are sitting with in the executive. I'm being joined now by Peter Wickham, a political analyst and a pollster, Caribbean pollster, to discuss the move of Anthony Smith Jr. to the other side. Welcome to the program, Peter.
Hey, good morning. Good to be with you, Callistra. Exciting times.
Exciting times in the Caribbean. Anthony Smith Jr., he's the talk of the town right now, making that move, declaring himself independent one day and the following day joining somebody's cabinet of ministers, becoming an executive member of the government. Can he remain independent, or is this just window dressing? He can very well vote against government policies that are brought to, and legislation that's brought to the parliament.
Yeah, no, I think independent is a convenient choice of words for now. That's not going to remain the case for a while. Look, he's clearly aligned himself with the Antigua Barbuda Labour Party. The challenge is that the Prime Minister can offer him a spot in the cabinet quite easily because he's a member of Parliament. The only qualification for being a member of the cabinet is being a member of Parliament in either the upper or lower house. Membership in the Antigua Barbuda Labour Party is an entirely different matter altogether. That is something that will require the support and consent of persons outside of that group. So for the time being, he is appearing as independent. My assumption is that he has submitted his application to the Antigua Barbuda Labour Party. The Antigua Barbuda Labour Party, not the government, but the party executive will have to consider his nomination and decide on it going forward. And the decision regarding his future membership will require also the involvement of two persons who have competed for the spot to represent ABLP in his constituency. So naturally, accommodations will need to be found for them. And I think that there will be ongoing conversations that will take place at the party level regarding his coming over, the implications, and what will be done with other persons as a result. So I don't see him as independent. I see him as independent conveniently, to be honest. And I think that it's just a question of time for discussions to take place regarding how will he fit into this new ABLP framework. How will that be facilitated? So I imagine that in a couple of weeks we will hear that he will become a full member. But as I said, you can't just be admitted to the ABLP on the leaders say so. It would require the involvement of several other persons who will need to be consulted.
And with others having aspirations to be the candidate in that particular constituency where he is. But we're looking at being brought into the cabinet, becoming a vote on the government side of the house, and is different from, as you said, becoming a member of the party and possibly a candidate in the next general elections, which are some time away. But does he have to? Gaston Browne has brought him in because his position is not that strong in terms of the numbers. You've got an independent, you've got the UPP members, you've got that Barbuda party. So his position is not the strongest, and so it's a coup. It's kind of like Delma Thomas and over here in Grenada joining the government, the parliament, the government side, sorry, of the Deacon Mitchell situation. But does Gaston Browne have to run him in the seat? down the road? Is he strong enough? What kind of strength is Anthony Smith coming with that he might be considered more attractive over ABLP candidate prospects?
Right. So this is the type of future discussion that I imagine is taking place now, and all these things will have to be considered. Certainly, if I were to advise Gaston Browne, I would say, look, he's the candidate. He won the seat on the last occasion. It was a seat that was previously held by the UPP, and my sense is that there's enough of a momentum for the ABLP to retain that seat with a new person in place. So I would think that he is a top pick for the seat. In the event that he is not, and they want to go with someone else, accommodations can still be made. So, for example, maybe Anthony Smith wants to go into an ambassadorial role overseas after this term. Maybe that's something that can be considered. Or alternatively, there may be something else he wants to do. So, to me, this gives us time to discuss possibilities regarding what he can do in the future. And I think that is entirely reasonable. But if you were to ask me the recommendation, I would say, yeah, he is the best candidate going forward. If, however, the party determines that it's somebody else, then they will need to make accommodations for the alternative person as they see fit. And that can also be done. The important thing is that the person, once he's a member of the cabinet, he's under the principle of collective responsibility. He will vote with the party at the level of the government in parliament. And it strengthens, as you said, it strengthens a majority in a situation where there's a majority of one. And just recently, one of the members hasn't been well. He is of advanced stage, and he hasn't been well. And his ability to continue may very well soon come into question. I do wish him well, but one assumes that at some point in time they may need to ask themselves. No, I'm saying if you're forced to go into a by-election in a situation where you have to rely on that victory in order to keep the government, you would probably be less inclined to do so. With this security now, one would assume that if they wanted to or if they were forced into a situation, then they would be able to have that option without calling a general election. So it's good for the ABLP. I definitely think it is a win for them. The matter for the UPP, however, is an entirely different one.
Does this have any impact on Anthony Smith's political negative impact on his political career, or is it just neither here nor there? Joining the other camp is another day in politics in the Caribbean.
Yeah, this is a question that also comes up. What is the future of a person who crosses the floor? I would say at the outset, a person who crosses the floor will have difficulty leading successfully into government. There are not a lot of examples. I would say Timothy Harrison St. Kitts and Nevis is unique in that regard, in that he crossed the floor and he essentially led the opposition into victory and became the prime minister. But that does not happen a lot in the Caribbean. Invariably, most people who cross the floor end up serving out some time in the other party, and then they go into political, I guess their political future is relatively less well defined. Now, in his case, he's young, and I think that's beneficial. The crossing of the floor concept, I think, is very well established in the Caribbean. You've had crossings in Grenada, we had him in Barbados. The opposition leader in Barbados crossed the floor, and he crossed the floor 4 times. I don't know if that's well known. We've had crossings in Trinidad and Tobago, going right back to Basio Pandey. We've had crossings as I said, in Antigua. There have been a few. The chairman of the ABLP currently used to be a member of the UPP. So it's something which is a conversation that we've been having in the Caribbean a lot of late. And while people seem to think that this is something which is philosophically abhorrent, the reality is that we're dealing with an environment in which there are only 2 political parties viable in most Caribbean countries, and the philosophical difference between them is 0. So it's a question of personalities, how people handle themselves, and I think that is created a very fertile environment for floor crossing. So the question is, what does he do after? And my sense is that he's a minister today. He was not a minister yesterday. He has at least 3 years at ministerial level serving. If after that he loses his seat, he would have been able to say that he was a minister for 4 years. The presumption that I would have had is that his future is brighter long term if he had stayed with the UPP. But he would need to explain and say what the reasons are that he did not see a future for himself within the UPP. Now, my assumption is that the UPP is on a growth track, and under current leadership, it has a reasonable chance of winning the next election. Maybe he has determined in his own deliberate judgment that that's not likely to happen, and that if the future of Antigua and Barbuda is under a ABLP government, then certainly it's better for him to be in a ministerial post serving his people in that constituency from that ministerial perch. And I think that that's really what it is. I don't see Anthony Smith as someone who would have been leader of either the UPP or the ABLP anyhow. And against that background, it's probably just as well that he, enhanced his CV by being able to serve as a minister, assuming that he has confidence that he can win the seat regardless of what happens in the next election.
He talks about a misalignment of values. A conclusion he seems to have come to a bit late, unless he's been pondering it for some time. Misalignment of values. Is there something going on in the UPP that speaks to an inability of the current political leader, Jamal Pringle, to unite his party coming out of the convention, which solidified him as the leader of that party?
I don't know. The misalignment of values language is something that I'm struggling with, because I really prefer when politicians can be more specific. The fact is that Jamal Pringle is not a strong leader. I mean, everyone knows that. When he was in Parliament alone, he did not lead the UPP, and I made the point that if you can be the only member in Parliament and still not be leader, it speaks volumes about your capacity. I was surprised, quite frankly, when he succeeded in the leadership battle against another at the level of the party. And there are conversations taking place now about whether or not the same individual that he competed against to be leader may very well want to also follow him into the ABLP, especially as I think he has a history in the ABLP before. So, the logic of the choice of Jamal Pringle is something that I was challenged by. It didn't seem to make a lot of sense in a situation where he couldn't win when he was the only person there. I know that there are others he is able to win. It seems a bit odd, but the party has made the decision in their own right. I think that Jamal Pringle's weakness really is in relation to organizational strength and whatnot. And I would have thought that this incident to me speaks more about his inability to hold a party together. And my sense is that, look, if you are on the eve of, not on the eve, but let's say you are on a growth pattern, you just won a by-election, demonstrating your ability to hold on to a delicate seat. You're reassured as a leader of the party, and the likelihood is that you have a good chance of winning the next election. That promise alone should be enough to hold your party together. And in an environment like that, he has not been able to. And I think that it says a lot about the extent to which people in there have confidence in him. If there's another defection, it's all over, because it really means that the choice that they made was a bad choice. But they're committed to that, and they have to go into the next election with him, it would appear. And we see what happens after. But my sense is that there's a challenge to him. He is clearly challenged in terms of the current role. You don't see Anthony Smith as a threat. There's no reason why anyone should be a threat to him, no, because he's standing as leader unconfidently. And I think that he should embrace, his members with aspirations of leadership and so on. Embrace them all, because you can't fight these battles effectively in opposition. You can't cut down people as you can in government. And the process in opposition is more of conciliation. He doesn't seem to get that, and clearly this is the fallout from it.
And so, Peter, while the role of the chairman as in across the Caribbean in political parties does not appear sometimes to carry much weight, but in the case of the UPP, is there also an issue there where this major defection and the possibility of other defections from the UPP, the chairman could not step in and shore up the situation and provide that kind of support and advice to Jamal Pringle so that they could keep their party together?
Yeah, but certainly this is a point that you were making that across the region, there are very few political parties in which the chairman does not have that pivotal role. In Barbados, there's a president of the DLP, and that is a combined role. But outside of that, we have a chairman who is different to the political leader, and in most of the other islands, the chairman's role is like a stabilizing effect. And I do feel that with a strong chairman like Anthony Smith being elected, it is entirely possible that these are the kind of problems that you could head off. Look, Jamal Pringle has to understand that he is now undisputed leader. He has to settle into his post. He has to understand that as leader of the party in opposition, his role is conciliatory. He will have power to be able to cut down people, but not just yet. And my sense is that his conciliatory role in pulling the party together with a promise of being in office in 4 years where he can do other things is something that should be enough to be able to hold it together with the assistance of a chair. The idea that he should be fearful of someone that has aspirations towards chairmanship or even leadership is something that is a bit unfortunate, because there will be that in politics. And I think that he has to harness people with that kind of ability and use it effectively, as distinct from trying to cut them down. So this would be a mistake on his part, as I said, as I would agree that he needs to embrace a strong chairman in terms of taking it forward.
But it seems neither him nor the UPP's chairman are able to provide that unifying environment for the UPP at this time.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, and with conversations taking place regarding other persons that may want to move, it speaks volumes. It speaks volumes about the fact that this is what's going on. And I remember one of the candidates in that constituency recently defected from the UPP as well, and I think that that's significant. You had the defection of the candidate in another constituency who came over and ran for the UPP in a situation where they had a by-election. And that was also significant. And, there are clearly some problems with Jamal Pringle's leadership. And my sense is that he is clearly not settled and comfortable in his role, and people are looking to jump ship. When you jump ship from a party that is gaining ascent is on the ascent, and you want to associate with a party that has been in office for 10 years, and the general belief is that it is a party that is losing support, it speaks volumes about not the ship you are jumping onto, but certainly the ship you're jumping off of, and the person who is captaining that ship.
I've spoken to people in Antigua about Anthony Smith, and they all have nice things to say about him, about the character of the man. But is there, when you look at that resignation letter, there's a lot of vague and ambiguous stuff in there. You know, and it does not seem to really add up to him seeking to find a home on the other side. I'm independent, but I'm in the cabinet of the other side. You can't be both. It doesn't make sense, and people are obviously going to see through that. I'm told that he also has a history with labor. That his father was a strong labor man. Is it something that could have maybe was unstoppable, that Anthony Smith always wanted to be where he is now? And it has nothing to do with what a poor leader Jamal Pringle might be, or whether or not he's trying to push people out who he sees as a
Yeah.
challenge.
But to answer that question, you would have to have a clear idea of what the ABLP philosophy is, and a belief that he and his family have a long-standing commitment to this philosophy that is very significantly different to the UPP philosophy. And unfortunately, there's no one that can explain to me what the philosophical difference between the two parties is. And against that background, I am inclined to think that, look, this is all about political convenience, and it is a more convenient star to which he should hitch his wagon at this stage politically than was the case in the past. And in the Caribbean, there are so many combinations and permutations regarding people's association politically, and there are people who were born into labor families that have evolved out of labor. And there are people who have converted in the other direction, and this is part of the conversation that we are having now. I mean, Grenada no less. Your political parties all came from the same root, the same origin, And you could say that some people are more one way than the other, but I think that it is a potpourri of political convenience, and this is exactly what it is. So I do feel that his language of saying, that I am temporary and, I'm sorry, independent and so on, has a lot more to do with the fact that he has an unfulfilled application to the ABLP pending, and he understands that it is complicated by virtue of the fact that they have held primaries in his constituency, and there are two persons who have done equally well in the primaries that have had to go through to another primary that was being scheduled again. In an environment like that, he's saying, "Look, I come in and take the seat, and all of these people who are competing for it are non-entities." In an environment like that, he has to walk cautiously. So he has to, use his language very carefully and say that, "Look, for the time being, I'm independent." But I don't believe that there's any doubt in anyone's mind regarding his commitment to the ABLP now. My sense is that yesterday he was probably not as committed to the ABLP as he is today, or sorry, day before. My feeling is that at that time he was committed to the UPP, and he made some very strong words in support of the UPP. But what we have to understand in politics now is only for a time. So as much as I would be committed now for a view that I hold at this point in time strongly, tomorrow it could change. We saw just with the nomination of Donald Trump, nominating the vice president, that has some very harsh words to say again. Nikki Haley spoke last night, and she also changed her views. Politicians have epiphanies quite frequently, and it's clear that there is a fertile market for the political epiphany now, and that's what I think we're seeing.
The UPP correcting the Jamal Pringle situation before the next general elections? Is there any window? Do they have another convention coming up?
I think that I'm not sure if he's elected for 1 or 2 years, but they will have another convention before. And my sense is that they have the opportunity to correct it. But in an environment where if he is comfortable with the idea of being replaced, it can go smoothly. If there's a fight and someone has to challenge him in a fight just before an election, it can become messy. And I would think that that would be ill advised. But there will be an opportunity before the election. And I think that the hope would be that if there was a general consensus at the level of the party executive and so on that he should move, then they may very well convince him to say, "Look, you're going to relinquish leadership for whatever reason." We've had leaders all over the region saying, that I've determined that this is not a good idea. In Jamaica just recently, you had a prime minister that said he felt that he was too old overnight. We've had a situation in Barbados where a person who was leading the Barbados Labour Party said he had a heart condition and he needed to move on. So there are good reasons why persons can do things like that. And I think Jamal Pringle could come up with a reason, or alternatively, there could be a messy internal fight. And I think an internal fight in 2 years within the UPP would not be a good look. I would probably convince people that it is not the party for the future. So we have to see what level of political maturity prevails in that organization.
Thank you very much for joining me on The Narrative. We've got to end it here. Thanks for
My
being on.
pleasure. My pleasure. Okay.
This is The Narrative. I'm your storyteller, Callistra Faria, on there with Peter Wickham, political analyst and a pollster. We're discussing the defection of Anthony Smith Jr. of the All Saints West constituency in Antigua, and he won on a United Progressive Party ticket. Just Monday announced that he is becoming an independent member of the Parliament of Antigua and Barbuda, and on Tuesday been sworn in as a member of cabinet of the Gaston Browne administration, becoming the Minister of Agriculture and the Blue Economy, but saying that he maintains his independence nonetheless. Back in a moment.